to Paddlecast with Betsy
and Billy. On Paddlecast, we talk to and about paddlers who are pushing the limits, paddlers who are pushing their own limits and pushing the limits of paddle sports.
We have the official Thames 200 Ultra recap for you today. It was the second ever edition of one of the fastest growing ultra paddling events in the world, and we saw some really top tier paddlers out there and some really close action.
We'll also preview the Scottish K1 National Championships and the Nith descent, both coming up in the last weekend of September.
And we'll recap the Breede River Canoe Marathon in South Africa.
And finish with a couple of new fastest known times in the warm down.
Let's start with the Thames 200 Ultra. This was on the August bank holiday. The race goes from the start of the navigable Thames River to the last lock before it becomes tidal, which adds up to a total of 200 kilometers. You can race it either nonstop or as part of a relay team. And we had a healthy mix of both types of racers this year. At the front of the relay race and at the front of the nonstop race, it was really, really close, like shockingly close for a 200 kilometer race. So let's start with the relay.
Yeah, in our preview episode, we had expected a Richmond versus Chelmsford race. I had expected Richmond to have a slight advantage. The team is rammed full of people who have tormented me through the years of racing. But I kind of expected Richmond to hold a slender lead going into the last leg. And we had been privy to the team information beforehand, which I don't think everyone was. And I knew it would be close because a K2 would be chasing down Tom Sharp in a K1 at the end. But I did wonder whether that K2 I knew wouldn't be completely fresh, having done a previous leg. So I knew it would be close, but I was surprised by Chelmsford winning, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I think we had looked at those teams' information and it was really tight. And you were like, I think I would just call it for Richmond. But then wanted to go back on and you're like, oh, but maybe Chelmsford, which was so accurate. And it really truly, I could not believe, following along the whole race, live streaming it, I could not believe how close those teams were. It was unbelievable.
It was amazing. Realistically, the best part of this race, I think, is the mass start. You've got some hugely experienced paddlers on that line. You've got European champion James Russell, world silver medalists in K2, Alex Morgan, Will Short, right up there as well. They stormed off into the lead. And this was literally 2 weeks before they all raced at the Marathon Worlds. Maybe it was good preparation, maybe it wasn't. But they both raced it, and they raced it really hard.
They did. Yeah, there were several of those paddlers racing, a couple on the No Boys Allowed team as well, who were also racing at the Worlds. And it seemed to be decent enough preparation, definitely for Will and Alex, who got their silver medal in K2. And then Will also got the gold medal in K1 in the short course, which was fantastic. So it seemed to be good enough preparation for them. Jimbo and Will and Alex went off so fast, truly leaving the rest of the field behind. And the rest of the field was good too, but they had a serious speed in mind off the start. And as you said, we knew Richmond, we thought Richmond was going to go into that last leg with a lead, and then that's where it would be determined. Richmond knew that they had to build up that lead going into that final leg because of the K1 versus K2 plan. And so Will and Alex were tasked with that, in the first leg, try and get an edge over Jimbo. And Jimbo hung on to them all the way to that first checkpoint. They came into the first checkpoint, and as soon as they realized they were close to the checkpoint, they put in a pretty big sprint so that they could get there faster because Jimbo kept going. So he didn't actually stop at the checkpoint at all because he was doing both legs.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Yeah.
It really was.
I mean, it seemed to work well. You know, he was then up against George Durden in the Richmond team uh, in the second leg. He was hoping Jimbo would have been tired by that point, but Jimbo really didn't drop off a pace at all, and they stayed neck and neck right until the end of their checkpoint.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty cool to watch. I know George was hoping Jimbo would be a little bit tired after the first 26 kilometers or so. Not so much. George actually won the DW solo stages race this year, so he's really quick and knows how to do these ultra distances.
Yeah, George is a really experienced paddler. He was just coming into the scene 10 years ago when I was paddling, and he was really quick then, and he's still going. He's one of the driving forces of the Elmbridge training group.
Yep, but it definitely tells you just how fast Jimbo is, that even for George to try and come and put some distance in after Jimbo's already done a marathon. It's hard work. And then I actually saw them again at midnight. So both teams, first few legs, they're completely neck and neck. Richmond knows that they have to put distance in sometime before the last leg of the race, and they haven't been able to do it. Dead even with Chelmsford. So then I see them at midnight when they're coming into Bisham, and the two crews, two K2s at this point, came in so close to each other. They literally could not pull into the bank at the same time. And they were and I mean at speed, these guys are going really, really fast. And they ended up actually having a little bit of a crunch of the nose of the boat on the bank, which was it was great drama. Really, really exciting to see, and just could not get out fast enough. They've got to change over their GPS trackers, get back on the water with the next crew. It was fast and furious. It was so competitive. It was crazy.
You interviewed both the crews after this, didn't you? What did they say?
I did. Yeah, it just sounded like they had an absolute blast out there from 10 p.m. to midnight on the water. But we can actually listen to the interview I did with them in that moment. So let's play that now.
Come in tight, come in tight, come in tight. Oh, come on, Mike, man out. On the grass. On the grass.
That was some insane racing. How was that leg?
It's quite frustrating. It was we'd both race, and then we were nothing's happened, so we'll paddle really slowly for a bit, and then we'll race again, and it's no, nothing's happened, so we'll paddle slowly again.
Classic junior boys racing.
It was just I think we were just very evenly matched in the end.
Yeah, it was good honest racing.
Yeah.
Faster the Portuguese, pushing on out of it, and a few chase downs between the two of us.
A bit of music through Reading was fun.
Yeah.
What the worst was probably some of the Portuguese were a bit high. Getting in Marsh especially was probably the worst, but other than that was...
We went to different lines at Marsh. You ran and got in.
Went short, yeah.
At Loch, and we went over the bridge and ran long, which I think paid off a bit better, but we came back.
See, it was a bit high, Joe, and I was I literally cannot touch the boat with my foot.
Leap of faith.
So you've got some evenly matched crews out there now.
I don't think we know how it's going to go. So
I'd like to hope it's going to continue with the excitement of how it's currently gone.
I suspect it might be a similar vein where hard racing in and out of portages and
so hard
tapping along.
It's a long way to hold a high pace to try and drop a crew.
It's so hard to get rid of a K2, really hard. It requires maybe a Walkington getting lost at Cookham again or something.
And I think if you Chelmsford, you've got to back the last K2 against Tom, although never write Tom off, but it's a pretty tasty K2 that they've got coming up last.
Yeah.
It'll be hard work for Tom in the K1.
Well, congratulations, guys. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So yeah, the guys were literally breathing heavy still. That was at least a couple of minutes after they had gotten off the water. So they were definitely working hard out there.
Yeah, that was fun to hear. That's quite a long way to be having tactics like that.
Yeah, definitely. And all in the dark, and just doing everything they could do to get an edge and never getting there.
Yeah.
But the next teams from there were evenly matched too, as you heard, which was so the teams that we just heard were Joe Peterson and Mike Laverack for Richmond versus Cassian Payne and Tim Gannicut Porter for Chelmsford. Strong paddlers, evenly matched. Cassian, I think, is actually still a junior too. So they paired up the juniors with the seniors, which worked well. So then the next teams from there, it was Brett Irvine and Steve Baker for Richmond versus James Walkington and George Hampton for Chelmsford. George is also a junior. And they were closely matched, but this is where one of the more dramatic moments of the race happened, when Steve and Brett actually managed to put, I think, like a couple of minutes into the Chelmsford crew. Steve and Brett are really quick. Steve Baker, of course, the unofficial record holder of the Devizes to Westminster, and definitely a very experienced top ultra paddler.
Do you know, just if we're going to talk about records that this crew have, and we're going to talk about it later, Brett has the record for Loch Ness.
Oh, yeah.
But they are a really experienced crew. So where did they get this gap? Do you know?
I think they were just like a slightly faster crew.
Yeah.
And Brett and Steve have also, I think they paddled together a lot. I don't know how much time they've spent in K2, but they did do the water sides, a couple of the water sides together this year. I've heard rumors that they might be planning to do more ultra distance things in K2.
These rumors as well. They've been racing together for a long time. I raced them over Thames Side 2 in 2017.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've been on and off in a K2 for a long time. So they're very experienced.
Yeah. So I think they were just able to put the time into James and George. It was, so basically everything's going to plan. Richmond is finally starting to get the lead that they desperately need. And then something goes wrong on one of the portages, and like Brett's paddle got, it was like his paddle slipped and like at the connecting point. And then he took kind of like, I think it was like a side swipey stroke, and they just immediately fell in.
Yeah.
Just
bad times.
Yeah, just one of those things where that happens. You go in the water. Now you've had a swim. You're losing a couple of minutes. And so essentially that's when James and George catch up to them, and they're not able to drop them again. Like you just heard Joe saying how hard it is to drop a K2. So they stayed dead even right the way to the final leg.
Yeah.
So then, that final leg, it was the Chelmsford K2 versus the Richmond K1. And even though the K2 guys had already been out and done one of the previous legs, they had managed to recover in between. And I think just K2 versus K1, it was Chelmsford who won it. Richmond didn't have that lead that they needed going into it. And Chelmsford took the win by several minutes against Richmond. So,
yeah,
impressive. But what do you think could have changed other than Steve and Brett falling in, which they did? I did check the times later, and Chelmsford won by more than the minutes that Steve and Brett lost from their swim. So,
but if they hadn't have swam and they had continued to pull out that lead, would that lead have been like 4 minutes by that point?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, like it could have definitely been a lot closer if they hadn't have swam. But yeah, what else do you think could have potentially? How could Richmond have potentially won this race?
Well, Richmond did have one notable absence from their team, and that is Andy Burkett, who was out through injury. He actually he broke some ribs in the summer. He's actually barely paddled this summer. He wasn't ready. He's only just started paddling again, really. And he could have made a difference if he had been fully fit. He's a phenomenal paddler, and he has won DW with Mike Laverack in 2022 against a really top crew, beating a really amazing crew into second place. But if he'd have been in that K2 with Mike Laverack, you could have maybe put Joe Peterson in with George Durden, at which point, that's a tasty K2, Peterson and Durden. They could have dropped Jimbo, I think. A tired Jimbo could have been dropped by a good K2. So maybe that would have been a point of difference.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I saw Andy, he was there supporting since he wasn't able to race. And I think he was probably one of the masterminds behind putting that crew together. So, adding another K2, adding another paddler to that team, that would have been very interesting.
That could have done it. But we had in the preview we had sort of suggested that No Boys Allowed would be close behind, but they actually ended up finishing fourth behind the Bradford-on-Avon team, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. And I actually had a sort of funny moment, because one of the things that you had mentioned in the preview was about the first paddler for No Boys Allowed, which was Lizzie Broughton, who is just like super, super top tier paddler, even when she's not been like training at levels she's trained at when she was racing at world championships regularly. She's still really, really fast. And the No Boys Allowed team had Lizzie in K1 in the first leg, ready to go out there and catch one of the really fast teams wash. You had mentioned the preview, you were like, those portages are really high in that first leg, where I think you said even I, at over 6 feet tall, have a hard time with it. Lizzie is a ways off of 6 foot tall, I would say.
Yeah.
And she said that, that your words haunted her on that leg.
Yeah, I mean, it's that first portage is tight. That was where I put in most days of training when I lived there, and completely fresh and not in a rush. You still had to take care doing it. Yeah,
it sounded. I mean, everyone complained about the portages too. It was. I think they are very difficult. So I think that was really tough for Lizzie, especially knowing her speed on the water. And if the portages had been, like regular portages and not crazy high, she would have probably been up quite a bit further. But she still ended up, I think, having a decent leg in the end and still managing to catch some wash. They did go well, and they did end up still having a really good battle, I would say, with the Bradford-on-Avon team, who ended up taking that third place position. But the battle for third and fourth was really good. And I definitely saw them at several points where those boats were pretty much neck and neck. So that was fun to see.
Yeah, there was some really good paddlers in there. It's a really strong club with lots of strength and depth. We had people, we had crews like the Escorts doing the Watersides and Thameside this year. They've got a lot of good paddlers there.
Yeah, the Escots did well at the Watersides, and I think they had a solid team coming into this. So it was nice to see a good battle for the third place position too. One of the things that Breede had mentioned before the event was that maybe some of the women racing on this crew could be potential DW racers in the future.
Yeah, Breede mentioned on the preview that she used a T200 last year to kick off her very successful DW campaign. It is sort of a real good gateway race into sort of UK ultra racing. And, plenty of people, Rebecca Bird did it last year as well, sort of did the T200 and then go on to DW. As we said, Brett and Steve did it this year, and, they're, quiet rumors that they might be sort of putting a DW campaign together. Did you hear of anyone else?
I'm not sure what I'm allowed to publicly confirm. I have heard some additional rumors.
Okay.
Maybe I'll say that maybe some people from some of the relay teams. I'm instigating some of these rumors too. I have to confess.
Okay.
I'm attempting to orchestrate some top K2 competition for DW next year. Whether that'll be successful, we'll see.
That Mike Laverack is on flying form right now, and he is definitely looking for a DW partner. And I suggested George Durden for him.
Oh, okay.
Which could be a very serious K2.
That could be. That
is an actual text message. I promise that happened.
We're just going to start making up these rumors and
no. It's a trumor, and I'm willing to screenshot it.
Well, George could end up in high demand. You know, he won the stages race.
Else that wants?
Maybe. There's James Walkington also. He finished second in the stages race and beat George on the last day.
Yeah, true.
So we'll see. And I think some of that No Boys Allowed team, I don't have any official rumors from them, but I'd like to, suggest that team maybe put together some DW crews. I think Katie Brooks has had a really good year in her marathon career, and I think Sam Martin looked good out there. Sienna Payne raced DW solo. She did the waterside solo. They were all on that No Boys Allowed crew. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see.
Let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Starsky UK.
Starsky is one of the world's leading brands for paddling gear. It's made by paddlers for paddlers.
Starsky offer everything from buoyancy aids and spray decks to drinking systems, butt pads, foot straps, really anything you need.
I myself have 2 Starsky spray decks with the shoulder straps, and this is actually what I will be using on the Fish River Marathon.
You can spot Starsky kit on loads of top paddlers racing around the world. Once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. To learn more about Starsky or get in touch with Rob from Starsky UK, check out our show notes. Let's get back to the show. Well, we have to talk about the nonstop solo race as well, which I think was the other head-to-head at the Thames 200 that was unbelievably close.
Yeah, so in the preview, we had said Tom Diaper, Isaac Blackman, and Harry Gilbert. Unfortunately, this ended up being just Tom versus Isaac because Harry ended up having to retire early again, second year in a row, and it's really gutting for him. But, he'll probably be back next year.
Yeah, I'm hoping third time's the charm for Harry.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
But the action between Tom and Isaac was, I think fair to say, even better than we were expecting. Like, we knew they would both be similar speeds, but it literally came down to like the final kilometer of the race.
Yeah, it was closer than that, wasn't it? At the turn, they were very close at the final turn, which is 500 meters, is it? 500 meters from the finish? I think it's closer to 700 meters. I will often pretend like that stretch is 500, but it's actually a bit longer. But it's a really interesting aspect of that solo K1 race just any solo race, is that the relay teams come through fresh with speed, and they can bring people back to the breakaway, and they can also drag you away from your rivals. Very interesting.
Yeah, and that was what ended up playing such a big role at the end of that K1 race, because Isaac and Tom had pretty much just decided to stay together and wash hang essentially the entire race. And then in that final leg was when Tom made a move to hop onto the wash of one of the probably slightly quicker relay crews. And then eventually Isaac managed to get onto the crew just behind them from Tunbridge, which was Greg Neal and a surprise guest of James Walkington, who had raced on the Chelmsford team, but then been roped into coming back to race for Tunbridge at the last minute because unfortunately Clive, Greg's dad, who was supposed to race it, was ill and wasn't able to race. So James stepped in as the last minute replacement, having already done a leg. So they both ended up on these two different relay crews coming into the finish. And then the Tunbridge crew started catching up the Royal Engineers team, and Isaac is, on them and then catching up to Tom. And he was literally like, we were watching the trackers, they were coming towards the finish, and the gap just kept closing like minute by minute. Every time we looked at it, that gap got narrower and narrower. Finally, they passed us. So you have to go past the finish line in this race. It's a little bit of a painful twist for the racers. So you have to go past the finish line, you go down to Teddington Lock, and then you turn around and come back, and then you officially finish. And it was just watching Isaac catching Tom. He had almost caught them by that turn. And then I think he had just worked so hard to try and catch him at that point that he kind of lost it a bit on the turn, and Tom managed to hold him off at the finish.
I spoke to Tom sort of in the days after the race, and he said that at times he was just redlining it to stay on washes, and you wouldn't do that in any other 200-kilometer sort of race. But he knew the importance of staying on certain washes, and he just had to bury himself to do it, because he looked over and Isaac was sort of doing the same. And yeah, it's a really cool race.
Yeah. It's funny because I think Isaac had said before the race in our preview and his pre-interview, like, I know that I can't treat this like a regular marathon race where I just absolutely blow myself out to stay on a wash. And then it's ended up, of course, they did that anyway. I mean, they both made it and they both got finishes, which is hugely, hugely impressive. So, huge kudos to them, and really good action right to the end.
What do you think the biggest surprises of the weekend were?
Other than just how close those two races were in the nonstop solo and the relay between 1 and 2, I was incredibly impressed by Mike and Karina Reese-Clark. We had spoken to Mike beforehand. Mike is a super experienced, top end paddler, super experienced ultra racer. He did Thames 200 last year with his sister Sam Reese-Clark, who is the current national champion in marathon, also previous world, Team GB world's racer. And they won that race handily last year. There was really no question that it was going to go to them for the nonstop. But Karina, who's Mike's wife, is not a paddler. I mean, she is now, but she's done quite a bit of cycling, but has not. I think this was her first kayak race ever.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And she was not the only person who was doing that. I think she was the only one in the nonstop category, but there were several in the relay, which I was also really impressed by. I thought, what a cool introduction to your first paddling race. But Karina they started training a few months beforehand, and, Mike taught her technique that would get her through the 200 kilometers. And Karina had supported for him. She knew what to expect and mentally prepared herself for it. They trained really hard. And they not only finished, but they ended up winning the nonstop doubles category.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I was really, really impressed. And it looked so, even though Karina was new to it, I think because Mike was coming in with that more sort of pro background. It looked very professional, the way they were doing all of their supports and their feeds. And obviously Karina knew how to do that as a supporter, but it was her first time as the racer. Just hugely impressive. And there were other teams who were faster than them on the water, but who ended up pulling out and not finishing the race. I think it shows too that you can go out and do the race as someone who is not an experienced paddler or racer, and you can do it successfully, but that if you are going to do that, you want to go with someone who really knows what they're doing, but that it is actually a great introduction to ultra paddling racing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And then in the canoe race, I had hoped it would be a little bit closer, but it ended up being Team Green Machine who absolutely dominated that race. Not surprising to see them win, but they won by a huge margin. This is the team who won the Yukon River Quest this year. And they did really well. So nice to see them out there. And second time racing the Thames 200 for Tor Harley, who did it nonstop in C1 last year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But should we move on to some other races?
Yeah, let's move on to the Scottish K1 Championships and the Nith Descent. So looking at these races, they are up in Scotland on Saturday the 27th and 28th of September. Perfect opportunity to make a weekend of it. You get 2 races, 1 weekend. You don't have to be based in Scotland to race the Scottish Champs. You only need to live in Scotland to be eligible for the Scottish National Championship titles.
2 great races. They're not too far away from each other. So for those who are not already in Scotland, if you're traveling up there, it's sort of like 2 for the travel of 1, which is pretty nice. Make the most of it.
Yeah.
The race on Saturday is K1s only, but the Starsky Nith Descent on the Sunday is open to any craft. So kayak, canoe, sup, and entries for both events are still open. We're going to include the links to the entry pages and the Facebook events in the episode description.
Yeah, so the K1 Marathon Champs is on the Saturday. It's going to be held on Loch Ken. The lake is about 14 kilometers long. It's super scenic. It's too early to say what the weather will be like, but normally in Scotland, they get every type of weather every day. So it could be very interesting. The long course is 13 kilometer with portages, and there's a shorter course for the age group racing. The River Nith for the Starsky Nith Descent is on the Sunday, and the water levels are looking really high. So that 16-kilometer race should be pretty quick for the racers. There's lots of rapids. It looks like it's going to be a great race for paddlers who are newer to descent racing to give it a go, especially since the high water levels this year should make it a little bit easier, just washing out some of those gnarly features. We'll pop some videos on here on the YouTube version of our episode, and you can see what the river's like.
Yeah, I think it looks like great fun. And I am really excited. I'm actually going to be going up to Scotland to do the media coverage for both events. If I wasn't doing that, I would be seriously tempted to race that Nith Descent, especially. I think maybe even in canoe. Yeah, the river looks really nice. And it just seems like kind of a perfect weekend away and way to get into more descent racing, which I'm definitely curious about. I'm sure some of our listeners are curious about that as well. Actually, Billy, what was the first descent race that you did?
The X. Yeah.
Did it go well for you?
Yes, it went really well, and I loved it. We did swim at, I believe we swam on flower pots, which is one of the last weirs on the course. The safety cover was absolutely amazing, and we had someone holding our boat. But by the time our heads had come up, there was people there. It was amazing, and just brilliant. And actually, if we're going to mention the X Descent, there is a group of people that are going to go training on the X and in the next few days ahead of a fish. And I am absolutely gutted that I'm going to miss it. I am, just green with envy.
Oh man, that is very cool. That sounds like a really good descent racing first experience.
Yeah, it was. We were in, really super stable boat, and we were juniors. We weren't really told anything about it, just sent down. And the guy in the back of my boat, who I'd done DW with the previous year, had done some whitewater paddling, and I had done none. And we got down, and actually, it was great fun.
Oh, that's so fun. I think that's a good way to do it with someone who maybe knows a little bit about whitewater, to do it in a K2.
When I say he's done a bit, he hadn't done enough to guide someone down the River X. I really wanted to include a rundown of the X on my farewell tour last year, and we were putting so much effort into researching it and really, going over it. And I was trying to gather as much information as I could. And at one point, I just thought, you know what? I went down this not having a clue, and now I'm so careful about it, which is the right thing to do. But yeah, I wonder, whether or not I was putting in too much effort.
Yeah. Well, I guess it shows you can go both ways, right? You can make it down and still have a good race. And we have the advantage here, for anyone thinking about the Nith, that we have got some insider information on it. So Rob Pretorius, who is from South Africa but based in Scotland, is running the race, and the Nith is his home river. And of course, we'll link the video so you can actually see, I think it's from Tom Dawson going down the river last year. But we have some insights from Rob about the race and where the rapids are and everything on the Nith. So let's listen to that now.
How's it, Billy and Betsy? Some information about the Nith descent. This year is quite a nice high water here. Last year we had very, very little water. It was close to being cancelled, which meant that it was very tight, very technical, very hard to pass. Which means, and this year you could probably pass, there's multiple lines down some of the rapids. So there'd probably be switching leads quite often. The start's quite a fun one because it's a Le Mans style start, which is the same as my home race for the Drag Challenge in South Africa. There's a rapid just off the start going underneath one of the main bridges. If you're not careful and haven't got your spray deck on fast enough, you can fill up with water. And if you ask Tom Dawson, it's a very easy place to fall out in the congestion of the start. The other notable rapids is the Delswinton Bridge, which is about a quarter of the way into the race. The river narrows, water goes under the steel bridge, and if you're not careful, you can spin you out if you're new to paddling in rapids. Then about halfway through the race, there's another rapid called Boat Stopper. I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about it. It's a really fun race. It's good for paddlers new to descent racing. There's no major obstacles, and it's all very, very, very fun. And there's lots of flat water between the rapids. The idea behind the race was to kind of allow people to come see the section of river that I train on. I used to live near the start of the race, and trying to recreate the fun of the South African races by having lots of beer, free beer, food, and sunshine. I'm still working on the sunshine. Scotland is a bit short in supply there. There's going to be a braai at the rowing club on the Saturday evening where you can register before the event. The bar will be open. There'll be some free beer. The next morning there'll be hot rolls, and then there'll be some food for sale after the event as well. Prizes will be sponsored by Starsky UK, so it'll be things like spray decks, life jackets, marathon pouches, all the things you could ever need for paddling. If anyone has got any questions, feel free to contact me.
How excited are you about the boat stopper?
Yeah, I like the sound of a boat stopper.
I'm so curious. I need to see it in action. I can't wait. But yeah, like the boat stopper, free beers.
Yeah, and Starsky prizes.
Yep. Yep. So Starsky UK sponsors the race, and they're sponsoring our coverage of it, which is pretty cool. And they have some really good products. The buoyancy aids are very popular. The spray decks as well that are specifically for descent racing are super popular, as are their drinker systems too, which are really nice and easy for fast changeouts of your drink.
Yeah, I have 2 of the decks, used them a lot. You know, they're super good keeping the water out. They've got shoulder straps on them, and yeah, they are really good.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool to see Rob like bringing that sort of South African racing culture into Scotland, and being inspired by the Drac Challenge, Le Mans style start should be fun.
Yeah, the video last year looked really fun.
Yeah. We should see some good paddlers there too. So last year's results, it was Alan Tordoff who won the K1 race and the solo overall. He's got a lot of Liffey wins, right, from a few years ago?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I want to say 7, could be 8 Liffeys in a row in the early 90s with his brother Ian. If you search the Liffey descent on YouTube, you will see numerous videos of Alan there racing that race. Hugely experienced river paddler, and he will be really tough to beat.
Yeah, so Alan is going to be coming back to race again this year to defend his title, I think in both the K1 championships on the Saturday and the Nith descent on the Sunday. And then we've also got, so last year it was Will Steveley in a WWR boat, who was first WWR and second overall. And his brother Sam Steveley raced last year too. Sam is coming back to race again this year, also a GB Wildwater racer. I'm guessing Sam is going to try and claim that first WWR title this year. If not, maybe challenge Alan. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Sam for the outright could be a really good bet.
Yeah, and then we've also got Gilbert Spears, who is the current Masters champion in the over 70 age group in the UK, in Europe, and as of the other day in Europe, he is world champion in the over 70s.
The infamous Triple Crown.
That's a hard list of titles to get.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it?
Especially over 70 years old. Also, like, the competition in that category is not as easy as you might think.
No, it isn't. No.
I think there's pretty fierce competition there. So, yeah, I think Gilbert is gonna go pretty well in the race.
So we don't know the full entry list, but last year we had guys from Nottingham and Chester like Grant Anderson and Colin Cartwright teamed up in a K2. They are hugely experienced WWR paddlers. It would be lovely to see more people go up for this race. It's really not that far. It's right on the southern end of Scotland, really accessible. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Entries are still open. So if you fancy a trip to Scotland, go ahead and get your entry in. And the fastest female finisher last year was Margaret Chapman, and the first stand-up paddleboarder was Tony Bain. So I think we'll see hopefully a bit of variety of categories and boats there too.
Yeah. We mentioned Sam Steveley. He recently won Monster of the Loch with his brother in SS2, beating Andy Burkett, who we mentioned earlier, who teamed up with David Hawken. They were getting some much needed time in the boat ahead of the fish, and they might be doing the double in the Surf Ski Worlds. They are a pretty good crew, but yeah, Sam Steveley got the better of them with his brother. So yeah, Sam really could go well here.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great to see. And he and Will are I think they're only 18, which is really impressive to have those kinds of results at 18. And I know, Andrew Burkett, as we said, is coming off of injury, but he and David Horkin that should be a pretty fast double. So
yeah, it's a good double. Yeah.
Yeah, really good for the Stevely brothers to beat them. I think that'll be exciting. Hopefully we see some good action up there. And Monster the Loch is another great race in Scotland. That was a few weeks ago now, but you go all the way down Loch Ness.
You've paddled Loch Ness, haven't you?
I have, yeah. And although I missed seeing Nessie, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I raced it as part of the Great Glen Challenge. So Monster the Loch is the, quote, shorter race. I think it's like 30 something miles across Loch Ness. And then the Great Glen Challenge, you go all the way from Fort William to Inverness. So you can do it either split up over 2 days, or you can do it all in one go. I did it all in one go in C2 in sit and switch canoe with my partner Dylan Kirk in 2021. We had a really great time. It took us, I think we were under 10 hours, I want to say. But it's just beautiful up there. One of my favorite races I've ever done. And actually, the Great Glen Challenge is coming up the 21st and 22nd of September. So this weekend, before those two races that we've just mentioned, the K1 Scottish National Championships and the Nith Descent. But the Great Glen is really cool. And again, it gets a good variety of paddlers and craft coming up. I was just looking at the entry list for this year, and actually we have got some really good stand-up paddleboarders signed up for the nonstop, including Emily King, who did the DW. She became one of the first two stand-up paddleboarders to do the official, to sort of pioneer the new official SUP category in the DW. Tanya Ecker, who we talked about her descent of the Loire River. So that was the Loire 725 that she did last year. Really cool. And John Nippers, who we've also talked about, who has a bunch of really impressive ultra paddling races under his belt, coming over from America to do it. So I think that's going to be some good action at the Great Glen too. Really cool race. So I am really looking forward to going up there to cover those two races. Huge thank you to Starsky UK for sponsoring our coverage of it. And hopefully I will see some of our listeners there. And if you're not there in person, you can, as always, follow along on Paddle Daily social media and the website. But let's move countries, because over in the Southern Hemisphere, winter is ending and the racing is starting up again in South Africa.
Yeah.
How did things go at the Breede River Marathon?
Yeah, it was cool. I saw this on social media, so looked into it a little bit more. They had the Breede River Marathon in South Africa. It was on the 6th and 7th of September. Number of weirs and rapids on here. Really interesting course.
Last year, the winners were Hank McGregor and Uli Hart for men's, and Melanie van der Kerk and Kira Bester for women's, who had also won in 2023. But this year, I saw that Kira and Melanie split up to race mixed, which made things interesting.
Yeah, they did. And actually, Kira and her partner, Dylan Farrell, were flying, actually winning the final warm-up race before the Breede, and taking some scalps and bruising some egos.
That's pretty cool. So who else was in the lineup for the Breede?
Yeah, this is what really caught my eye. I looked through the results and it was just oozing with talent. There was just so many top paddlers in this race. So we had the Mocker brothers, Greg Lowe, Matt Fenn, Kenny Rice, who we actually reached out to speak to, Mark Keeling, as we just said, Kira Bester, and Josh Fenn. It was like a who's who of top paddlers.
Well, especially since it clashed with the Marathon Worlds in Hungary. It's like the only people who were missing were in Győr.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had a chance to talk with Kenny Rice about how the race went?
Yeah, I reached out to former winner in 2017 and 2018, Kenny Rice, to tell us about the race.
So the Breede River Canoe Marathon is traditionally a K2 race here in Cape Town during our winter months. There's pretty cool sort of pre-races and the build-up to it. But yeah, it's basically a 2-day race, about 70 odd kilometers. The first day is about 38, and the second day is about 32. But yeah, the Breede is very susceptible to rainfall. So it can be very low if there hasn't been any rain in the weeks leading up to it. But the water is usually crystal clear and very refreshing. Fast flowing water, but longer pools between these sorts of they're not like traditionally big rapids, maybe a bit more like cellar style rapids from what I've seen from those photos. Yeah, so basically 2-day event. Day one's a mass start, day two is a lapsed time. It differentiates from other races in South Africa because it's probably much more flat water racing rather than river racing per se, because it doesn't have these bigger rapids like a lot of the traditional South African races have. Although for the context of Capetonians or maybe other people around the world, it probably is still intimidating rapids. But the river in itself, when it's normally between 5 and say like 20 cubics, is very timid. And there's not many opportunities to actually break your boat properly, like rapid or anything. Whereas when it starts getting to your like 200, even to like 1,000 cubics, which, it doesn't normally reach 1,000 cubics, but it's very often in the rainy season up to 200, 300 cubics. And then it becomes a very difficult river because it's like a massive highway of water and you're paddling through treetops and stuff. So then it becomes very dangerous. But this year we had, I think, just less than 10 cubics, so about 7 or 8, which makes it a very tricky race for heavier crews and also for novice crews. So, with the lower water level this year, myself and Mark had a pretty good race. I mean, not the end result we had won, but I think we, on paper, were probably the stronger boats. And we had a phenomenal start, put everyone under pressure, but we broke away quite a few times in the first 20 Ks. But unfortunately, I think because the guys we were with weren't necessarily the people we were racing, they were probably more second bunch, but the bunches are like switched around in a way. By the time we got into the flat sections before sliding, which is just at halfway of day one and kind of a very decisive obstacle. We were pretty comfortable until then, but our game plan was to kind of hurt ourselves as much as possible, replicating Starsky world champs. So we solidly did that. And by the time we got to the last sort of obstacle, Yonkia Bridge, which was a compulsory portage this year with about 8 Ks to go to the finish, I think I was a bit worse for weather and Mark was cramping. So we kind of got dispensed at that portage and we couldn't really chase back on. So we just tried to limit the damage and then recalibrate for day two. As with doubles and not paddling doubles a lot and stuff, nothing was clicking on day two. So we got caught by the 3 boats behind us. And we're actually all working really well together. And we nearly caught the front 2 boats at Waterfall Rapid, which is also about 8 or 9 Ks to go. But because the water was so low and quite bony, 4 boats going through like probably a 6 meter wide channel where there was only actually maybe like a half a meter to a meter gap, it becomes like a bit concertina the whole time. And we got stuck and ended up ramping a rock. So that was the end of our race for podium and just got to the finish. But all in all, lovely weekend out. It's one of my all-time favorite races because of the vibe, and you stay in these beautiful cottages and stuff along the river. There's beautiful wine farms and stuff on Saturday afternoon for lunch and some wine tasting. And we've been very fortunate with great weather the last few years.
Well, I feel like that was a bit of a roller coaster. He said 1,000 kumaks and I had like a tiny heart attack, and then he was like, staying in nice cabins and having wine tastings, and I was like, oh, maybe I do want to do that.
Yeah, that sounds nicer. I watched some videos of the race on the website, and it did look low water levels, but also, it was still pretty technical, but you needed to be paddling well to go well there.
Yeah. No, that was really interesting, and you wouldn't think about the South African rivers being compared to the Sella, like he said, right? Because the Sella is so low. And then, we think about South African rivers being more almost like whitewater. So that was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of guys not wearing spray decks on some of the videos that I was watching. But as Kenny said, you did also need to get your deck on at times. So there's some interesting sort of dynamics there going on in the racing. I know that when I do the fish in a couple of weeks, I will definitely be wearing my spray deck at all times.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine. I'm stuck on the imagining what it would be like to race that river or just to paddle it when it's up at 1,000 cumex, because that is cubic meters per second for anyone who's not familiar.
Yeah. Well, when John O'Grady and I did the Ardèche 2 years ago, we were stood on the riverbank, a long way from a river, and I just sort of looked in the trees. We were trying to hide some of our sort of stuff that we didn't want to take down the course with us. And I looked up in the trees, and there was debris and like litter in the trees from the previous winter. And, we were easily 15 meters above water level at this point. And so I looked on the graph online about flow, and you got sort of similar sort of differences in water. And, I think that went up to sort of 2,000 off the top of my head. There's just a huge amount of water sometimes that goes down these rivers,
Oh my God. That's crazy. But that was great to hear from Kenny about how his race went.
Yeah, it was good. So the race was won by Greg Lowe and Matt Fenn, who are clearly in great form. They had a narrow win ahead of Jasper and David Moka. On the post-race interview, Greg said that they traded leads most of the way down the course, but due to log jams towards the end, the lead was just changing all the time, and the final log jam just luckily went their way, and they took the win. Greg and Matt will be some of the favourites for the Fish River Marathon in around 3 weeks' time.
That's exciting. Yeah, I'm wondering how much we can kind of extrapolate from the results here to Durban, because a lot of these names will be racing at the Surf Ski World Championships in Durban. We're going to do a preview episode on it, which I'm really looking forward to. From what Kenny was saying, it sounds like it was a little bit more about flatwater racing than river skills compared to a typical South African river marathon. But yeah, it's still probably hard to say how much of an indicator this is for how people are going to perform in Durban.
Greg Lowe is an incredible river paddler, and he took the win. So I think it did still favour the really experienced river paddlers. But if you're looking in at who's fit and in form, we've just seen Nicky Notton go very well at the Marathon World Championships. Matt Fenn was in the winning boat here. As Kenny said, him and Mark Keeling were flying, and did some stuff go wrong towards the end. These guys are all. It's a home Surf Ski World Championships. They are all going well, and it's going to be pretty impressive to watch. Kira's, as you said. They won the warm-up race to the Breede, and were they 8th on this race?
Yep,
her and
8th
Dylan
overall.
Farrell.
Yep.
So there's some guys that are in form here.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited for it. And as you say, the fish too, that'll be good. And that one is the fish the weekend before. That's the weekend before Surf Ski Worlds.
Yeah, weekend before Surf Ski Worlds, and then everyone's jumping in cars and heading off to Durban.
So cool. Can't wait to preview that and follow it.
Well, I can't wait to go.
I know. I'm excited for you to go. You're gonna have to send lots of updates.
Yeah.
And try to stay alive down the fish. But we've got to save that for our Durban preview episode. Let's finish today then with our warm down. Billy, you have got some really cool stuff for us to talk about here.
Yeah, I think it says something about the amount of time I spend on Instagram that I found these two really cool things. The first one is a circumnavigation, which everyone knows I love. So this is Round Gozo. I came across this on Instagram, and it was actually done by a fan of the channel. The Surfski Shack in Malta, which is an accredited Mocha Surfski school, recently hosted their annual Round Gozo race. This is a 35-kilometer circumnavigation of the island of Gozo on the northwest corner of Malta. This was the 4th edition of the race, and it proved to be a record-breaking one, with records falling in the men's and women's singles category, as well as the men's 65 to 69 age group.
That's really cool. Malta is just this amazing place, sort of in the middle of the Mediterranean, and I have to imagine that was a fun record to break. How fast is the new record?
So Matt Schembri now holds the outright record of 3 hours, 11 minutes and 33 seconds. That is an average speed of 11 kilometers an hour, which is pretty tasty. I reached out to Matt to tell us a bit more about the Surfski Shack and the Round Gozo race.
Hey, Billy, thanks for reaching out. I'd like to say well done to the Pedalcast for doing a great job promoting pedal sports. So basically in Malta, the club was founded in 2008, and it's basically run by a group of pedaling enthusiasts voluntarily, and we're like a family that help each other reach each other's pedaling goals. Pedaling in Malta is actually quite cool. You can pedal all year round. The coldest temperatures you'd see in the peak of winter are around 10 degrees, and personally I prefer pedaling in winter. Our club is located in Natural Port, and you can pedal in almost all conditions. And the prevailing wind is northwest, which lines up perfectly for a great down on the west coast. We've actually had pedalers from all over the world, from South Africans, Portuguese, Italians, Germans, Americans, Australians, and Norwegians. And also as a club, we try to organize as many events as possible, and also try and make trips abroad for some international races. In fact, at the moment, we have a 19-year-old girl called Mattea, who's on a student exchange in Oslo, and she's smashing both flat water and surfski pedaling over there. One of the races we try to organize is the Round Gozo Challenge, which we try and hold towards the end of summer when the temperatures start to cool down a bit. This year we had 5 people do it, and it was quite challenging, especially on the north coast, because we're northeasterly as well. I was really happy to break my own record around the island, but I was also happier to see my friends smash their goals, especially Andreas Bonsack, who we call Mamba, who set an incredible time for the over 65 men's category, and also Larissa McAuliffe, who managed to get the women's overall record. If any peddlers want to get in touch or come pedal in Malta, they can look into our website. You can Google us. We're called the Surfski Shack. And just drop us a message, an email, or give us a call. And we're happy to sort you out.
That was really cool to hear from Matt. It sounds like he's got a really good operation going there, and that they have a really nice kind of culture with their paddling. And some good conditions for downwinding.
Yeah, really cool place. I'd go out there and have some lessons. I'm going to hook up with Matt in Durban. So yeah, I might be able to tell you a little bit more about his paddling later.
Nice. Well, that sounds great. Yeah, I could definitely see you going after that Gozo circumnavigation record. Maybe you and Matt could race around together. That would be fun.
We could race around together. I've seen his paddling. I don't know if I want to go head to head with him. Whenever I am planning a long paddle like that, I do tend to make the plans around paddling ever so slightly slower than 11 kilometers an hour. So yeah. I don't know whether I will go for it.
Next year.
Next year, maybe.
What was the second item? I think this is about Downwind Drag Race, right?
Downwind Drag Race has a new fastest split, and it's quite exciting leading into Durban. 2 weeks ago, 3 of the top British paddlers met up in Devon for a mini training camp in the lead up to the World Championships. On the final day, Terry Miller gave it some salad on a big downwind from Woolacombe to Linton and set a blistering 2-minute 48 kilometre on the 34 kilometre paddle. Terry hit 12 sub-threes, including 6 back-to-back, which is just insane. Terry Miller, Toby Paynton-Jones and Ryan Lark are putting in some great work and raising the bar of British ocean racing.
Wow. That is, so they went for a 34K paddle and he had that many under 3-minute kilometers.
Yeah.
And hit a 2:48. That's crazy.
See, Scoob doesn't share his Strava, and if he does, he doesn't do it with very many people. So I asked Toby how Scoob was going, and he said he's absolutely flying. So, you know, I think he's really going for this.
I'm excited. Yeah, Scooby, Ryan Lark, he also raced at the Marathon National Championships in Norwich a few weeks ago, so I saw him race there too. And he did really well. I mean, a little bit behind the top guys who were at sort of the World Championships. But his strength is definitely in the ski. Devon is home waters for him. And yeah, I think he is going for it in Durban. So I'm looking forward to that. I think, you know, he's won every race that he raced in the UK this year in surf ski.
Yeah. He's cut above the rest, really.
Yeah. And really exciting for Terry to take that Downwind drag race crown. So Downwind drag race, for anyone who may not know, is you can follow it on social media. You can submit your fastest downwind splits, and it's whoever can get the fastest time over 1,000 meters on the sea on a downwinder. As a point of reference, the Olympic record for flat water for K1 men's 1,000 meters is 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So that's kind of like your benchmark, which is already insanely fast for flat water. Out on your downwinder, you get the help of wind, waves, maybe tide. You can go a lot faster, but still like below 3 minutes. Yeah, that's fast.
Yeah, they don't get many sub 3 minute times.
They do not. And I guess Terry and Toby didn't submit all of those splits on a single paddle, but looking at the entries, the submissions for Downwind Drag Race, only 9 of them this year are under 3 minutes, and 4 of those 9 are from that sort of group on the North Devon coast. So, and there's
I was reading an article about Gordon. I think he's literally only just broken the 3 minute barrier. And I'm sure there was an article that I was reading just in the last couple of weeks where he said, you know, he'd been close several times. You know, he did one, looked down at his watch, and, you know, it flashed up, and he was like, oh, cool, you know, I've made it. And then I think he said he hit the next 2 in a row as well, or something like that.
Wow. Yeah. Gordon Harbrecht is one of the names on Downwind Drag Race. Hank McGregor, like there's some serious paddlers on this list who have not hit 2:48, at least this year.
Yeah.
And I actually was trying to find the fastest split on Downwind Drag Race. And Billy, surprise, surprise, it's you.
It's a massive surprise, to be honest, because you've got some of the top names in surf ski racing on there, and then you've also got my name. What I will say is I was in the back of a double, and the driver was very, very good.
Yep. So this was you and Matt Rowlands. Was it last year, 2024?
Yeah, last year in a huge, there were storm warnings, amber storm warnings in the UK, a big tide. So we did get a lot of help. But yeah, I mean, Matt did some pretty crazy driving there and just linking serious wave after wave, and I just tried to not mess the boat up, and it worked. We hit a 238, and I was like, wow, that's incredible. And then at some point, a little while later, we hit a 230, and so I was very proud of it. But I'd say, I'm trying to put a figure on it. I'd say somewhere near something like 98% of the credit needs to go to Matt.
Well, your name's on the list anyway, so
it's on the list. Yeah,
it is, or at the top of the list specifically. So pretty cool to see people hitting those times.
That got me a shout out on the Paddlers Pod, and we got a shout out on the last episode of the Paddlers Pod as well for being a highbrow paddling podcast.
We did, which was lovely, and I think probably the first time for either of us being described as highbrow, which was very exciting. Yeah, I don't want to get into too much of a game of, and they gave a shout out, and we gave a shout out, and they gave a shout out, but that was pretty cool, and I did enjoy that. So on that note, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much to everyone for listening as usual. Thanks to Starsky UK for sponsoring this episode. Please go check them out. And do sign up for the Scottish K1 National Marathon Championships and or the Nith Descent coming up at the end of the month. If you do, I will see you there. And until next time, see you on the water.
See you on the water.